But that's one of the things I think we're missing. And the reason we can demonize each other is we don't see the human side.
Well, this is an absolute joy, and I'm genuinely honored here to be speaking with director Steve Pink and Adam Kinzinger, the director and subject of The Last Republican. Gentlemen, I really appreciate the time for this because this film is not only wonderful, I think it's incredibly important. So thank you so much for your time.
It's great
Yeah,
being here. Thanks.
yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Honestly, I really appreciate it. Um, I have to know, let's just as we get started, Steve, how did the film start? How did you get involved in Adam's world?
A bunch of colleagues and I formed a documentary film company, and I was actually introduced to Adam by the founder of our company, and I immediately said, "No, please, no, I don't want to do a documentary about, or a conservative Republican. That's not my brand." But it was clear to me that, in the aftermath of Jan 6 and looking at what Adam had done, and the fact that he was from my home state, weirdly, out of all the things, I was like, oh, the guy's from Illinois. I'm definitely interested. I think it's just one of those like things, you have, a familiar, because I had like that familiarity with him, being from Illinois, and so seeing what he had done, I found him to be an incredibly compelling subject, because anyone who decides to throw his whole career away based on truly held beliefs is just, in terms of like storytelling, always an important story to tell. It's very hard to do that in any category. Anyone who decides to sacrifice in real terms the way they've arranged their life for something they believe in, meant for a great story, and it was important to tell it.
Well, one of the things that I love about this film, I think it gives it almost a charm, is listening to the two of you
Mm.
uh, go back and forth, because it's rare, to be perfectly honest, Steve, it's rare to hear a documentarian engage the subject so much on film. And the two of you have this incredible rapport where you're pushing back, but you can also sense genuine affection with one another. And I would love to know for you both, what was it like to open yourself up, like Adam, for you to open up yourself and to sit with someone who sits so fundamentally across the aisle?
Listen, this is what I think is amazing, and it's frankly amazing about the timing of this coming out is, at a time when the country, frankly, the world feels really divided. And just like the other side is foreign and not real, and, it's faceless memes, to show that there can be true understanding. Now, again, I don't see anything in common with insurrectionists. I want to be clear about that. This is just, political philosophy. But it was amazing to me because look, we had a ton of documentarians that wanted to do a documentary, but it was all like, hey, we want to, follow you and see if you can win re-election as an anti-Trumper in a Republican primary. And I knew I wasn't going to run again. And but when Steve and his crew came to me and said basically, look, we're interested in the human element of that. That was interesting, especially my wife and I. We were expecting at that point, our kid's now 3 years old, and it's like, how do we tell this time frame to him? How do we ever explain it? And this is the perfect way to do it. But look, it was initially really difficult to open our lives because in politics for 12 years, you have to put up a front because if I sit there and chew tobacco and say the F word and do some of the things I do in my office, and it's just like a regular person of the press, they're going to write about me doing that stuff, right? Because the human side is not what they're interested in. And so being able to welcome somebody in and say, okay, look, I'm not going to put up a front with you. It's also nice to know that this thing's not coming out for a couple of years, right? So it's not like it's going to affect you in that moment. So initially, I'll say I felt vulnerable. Initially, we were a little like kind of standoffish. And then as Steve and I got to know each other and as I relaxed, it became really massively genuine. And the thing is look, if I rip on you, it means I like you, because if I don't like you, I'm not going to rip on you. And so what was awesome was just seeing, this didn't even start out as the intention to be like a me and Steve thing, but it just was so organically awesome that it worked perfectly because we genuinely like each other. I mean, I would go on vacation with Steve, somewhere where I wouldn't be embarrassed to see a guy to be seen with him, but I would go. And I think that's what's important is to show that you can like each other and have different views.
Yeah, like we're not really popular in New Zealand, so I feel like that's a great place for us to vacation, maybe, you know what I mean? Like somewhere where no one knows either of us, and will probably be like a good spot. There's a great moment in the doc, speaking of like these candid moments that people bring up all the time, Adam. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. It's a tiny little moment where you're looking for the remote because you want to see what's on television, and it's just this little moment where you go like, where the fuck is the thing?
I remember that.
And you grab the remote, and then what's revealed is that the Republicans, I think, have taken the House. And so in that, a lot of people bring that up to me because they're like, they find it is such a moment where you're like, you're not used to, and you probably, this better than anyone. You're not used to lawmakers and Congress, people being actual people, because they have such a strictly like media, like created persona. Right. So you don't actually know who that person is. But a lot of people bring that up. And I'm like, he's just a guy looking for his remote. I thought it was a great transitional moment, but I never thought of it as like significant. And a lot of people say how that moment really, helped them kind of warm themselves to you, which is just a really funny way in which people,
That's neat.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's exactly, I think, one of the things about this film that makes it so that gives it such an affection is Adam, is you and your family. To be perfectly honest, because Steve, I think you're absolutely right. Not just you, not just people in Congress, not just politicians, people in the spotlight, the media spotlight in general. We tend to gut them of personal lives or the personal lives that we deem our business. But these are human beings, and that seems like such a nonsensical point to make, but there is, you are, as you're making out, standing on the hill and making these judgment calls and whatnot. I mean, you're going home to your wife and your newborn, and you're connecting, but the people don't see that. The people don't see that in general. And I guess for you both, I would love to know or why you think it's so easy for people to just forget the line between people and politics, because the way you were treated is inexcusable.
Look, and it's funny because while you're saying that, I was getting a little emotional just hearing it, but also like, the reality of it is, I mean, I do the same thing, right? Like when I got into politics, I was always shocked to like, go travel. I was great friends with John McCain as an example. And, I got to know him as a person, right? I got to see his emotion when he told the story about the Forrestal fire, the Navy ship while he watched his crew chief burn alive, right? And you realize like people have human emotions. And unfortunately, when you're public, you have to put on that kind of two-dimensional front. And I think that's just what it is. People, if you're on TV or they see you, they assume you're on top. And it's kind of the natural human condition. We're all guilty of it, myself included, to want to watch people at the top kind of fall. I don't know if it's entertaining or what it is. And but it's also hard to accept them as people if you don't agree with them. And that's one of the things that I do love about this is, look, you can hate me. I mean, I always jokingly say in any room I am, half of the room hates me and half of the room loves me, right? It's like, which half is it today? And but that's one of the things I think we're missing. And the reason we can demonize each other is we don't see the human side. And that's what I love about the film is it shows that human side. It shows the human side of Steve, and it shows the human side of me and my family. I've got a kid too that someday is going to read about this point in history. And what is he going to say about me? Is he going to be ashamed? And that was a very driving factor for me was like, I want Christian when he Googles his last name to be proud of it and not ashamed.
I mean, for me, well, first of all, that's how I feel about it. I'm like, I half love, half hate him, like that's how I feel. Well, in all seriousness, that joke didn't really land. I thought it would actually land. I didn't pull it
That's
up.
how much of a jerk you are.
If you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. but like, and Adam was really concerned about this, which became really apparent when things became very intense and there were death threats coming into the office, and Adam and Sophia were experiencing death threats. Um, it was a very serious and difficult time for the office, and how everyone, how his staff, all kind of pulled together to support each other. Was a beautiful thing to see, because they all were working for a cause that was really important to them and could threaten their careers. Like, I would talk to the staff, and it's not in the movie. And I would say, well, what's it like out there in the hallways and stuff? And, they felt the 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 stress of being, the staffers to someone who had been made a pariah for ridiculous reasons, right? For standing up for his truly held beliefs, he's made a pariah in the halls of Congress, which is itself just totally absurd. And then it goes down to the staff level, and like, it was weird in the cafeteria. Like, I asked them, I was like, well, what about, your relationships with staffers of other lawmakers? And they're like, it's a little weird. And that was something that was kind of shocking and surprising. It's like, wow, there's a real problem here when, like, the people who are working for their constituents, or, working on behalf of Adam for Adam's constituents and staffing in office, have to feel uncomfortable in the cafeteria
Yeah.
because Adam's doing what he believes in. Like, it really affected a lot of people.
You think
And
about it, I went from rising star in the party, 40 under 40, rising stars, next presidential candidate, to pariah in record time. And the only thing that happened, I didn't get caught, with an intern. The only thing that happened was I stuck to what I believed. And it's a damnation, frankly, on the party, but it's also, I think it's important for people to see that.
Absolutely. Like, this is one of the things, from this film, Adam, I have so much respect for you, because
Thank you.
this is not whoops, or uh-oh. This is no, no, this is not who we want to be. And I
Mhm.
can't side with this. And for whatever reason the machinations are, you were deemed not towing the line, if you will. And
Yep.
that's heartbreaking. Um,
what I
but
find particularly heartbreaking, being from the outside, is it's his job. It's in his job description to uphold the Constitution. It's like, it's not like a secret thing. Like, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution, and Adam decided simply to do that, and for that he was thrown out of his party. Like, that's shocking. Like, that's just a shocking thing. Like, that's politics aside. Like, they can be like, oh, we decided we don't want Adam in our club anymore because he's not towing the line in terms of what we want him to say. It's actually worse than that. Like, so many of lawmakers just frankly violated their oath in ways that are unconscionable. And it's something that I was kind of shocked by. And, you'll see in the documentary that Adam was actually kind of shocked by too.
Mhm.
There's this moment where he talks about, like, everyone thinking they'd wake up from the hangover, like they went on like a drinking binge, and then, after Jan 6, he thought everyone would wake up, right, and reset their principles and reset, the party, and that didn't happen.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but just as we start to wrap up, Adam, I'd love to hear, because one of the things you talk about at the end of the film is you you don't want in the second half of your life to not put your life on the
Mhm.
line for people. But we see the cost. And with everything that's happened, I would love if you could answer if this was worth the cost.
Yeah, look, I still have to fight cynicism every day, and especially after this last election, right? It's like, what did we do? But I will honestly say, and I mean this, and I'm not saying it for accolades, it was worth the cost, because the thing I know is that, look, I was in the military for 20 years. I was willing to die for this country, literally, right? I went to war. And it's like the sacrifice I had to make on behalf of this country in politics didn't cost me my life. I actually have a much more comfortable life now. It cost me a few friendships and whatever else, but there are 18 and 19-year-olds that gave 50 times what I had to give, 500 times what I have to give, because they gave their lives. So yeah, it was worth it. And I truly believe that in 10 years, there's not going to be a single person in America that ever admits they voted for Donald Trump. This is my opinion. And I know that, again, when my kid is in history class someday learning about this time frame, and he's like, gee, I wonder what my dad did during that. He'll Google his name and he's going to be proud. And, that makes a difference to me. And so yeah, it was worth it. I don't want to have to go through it again, but it was worth it.
For what it's worth, we don't know each other, but I believe Christian absolutely will be proud of his dad.
Thank you. Appreciate
gentlemen, what a joy to chat with you. I know we've run out of time. Thank you, Adam. Adam Kinzinger and Steve Pink for The Last Republican. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Thank you. It was awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. It's great chatting with you both, too. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.